Industry Training and Apprenticeships Amendment Bill. The schedule of the proposed questions are, members, we now move to the Industry Training and Apprenticeships Amendments Bill. The question is that Part 1 stand part. It is a debate on clauses 4 through to 23 and includes schedules 1 and 2. Question is that Part 1 stand part. I call the Honourable Member Megan Woods.
Mr Chairman, it's useful that we've come to the time to debate this bill in a very detailed way as we go through the committee stages of the Industry Training and Apprenticeship Amendment Bill, because it really is in the detail the reasons why it is Labor opposes this bill. So let me set it out very clearly, Mr Chairman, what the two reasons are that Labor opposes this bill are, and both of these reasons are contained in Part 1 of this bill, specifically in Clause 15 of the bill. The major problem with the bill, as we see it, is the proposal to allow other organisations other than industry training organisations to be directly funded by the government to organise and undertake industry training. That's our first major concern, Mr Chairman. Our second major concern with this piece of legislation is the proposal to remove the skills leadership function from our industry training organisation and what that is going to mean for the sector, and we have some very real concern around that, what that will be. So if we have a look at Clause 15 of this bill, this is where a lot of the problems for us are embedded. And it's also, Mr Chairman, where a lot of the problems that the many submitters who came to the Select Committee and voiced their opposition to this bill and their concern with this piece of legislation focused their attention. We've spoken at previous readings of this bill, Mr Speaker, about how we had submitter after submitter from a range of organisations come in and tell the committee that this was not a bill that was going to fulfil the purposes that it was set out in its purpose statement to do. That this was not a bill that was going to enhance industry training in New Zealand and add to the environment we have. So if we have a look at Clause 15 and the proposal that persons other than industry training organisations may receive funding for industry training. Mr Chairman, this is nothing more than a continuation of this government's privatisation agenda in the education sector. This is rolling out privatisation into our industry training sector and just siphoning out bits of money. Does industry want this? No. This is something that industry came very clearly and told members at the Select Committee that this was not something they saw as adding anything to how it is that we deliver skills training in this company. So direct funding is going to bypass ITOs and introduce competition. The tender process is already underway before we even pass this legislation, I do note. And if we take one example to have a consideration of how this legislation is going to pay out for a given industry, there is a very large player in the aged care sector who is currently tendering to have direct funding under this legislation and to be someone other than an ITO who delivers the skills training. Now, the danger, Mr Chairman, here is that what we are going to have is that we are going to have delivery of skills training that suits that business rather than the industry of a whole. It will be training that is directed at one particular business. Now, some people might say there's no problem with a business training to suit the needs of their business. But, Mr Chairman, the problem for us is that this is using public money to do it. It's not simply a private organisation deciding it's going to do some professional development with its workforce and it's going to train them to suit the needs of their business. This is using industry training money that can potentially essentially put into the business of one person. The other major problem we have with this is that private providers of industry training can cherry pick businesses that they deal with. And Mr Chairman, we heard very clearly from submitters who came to us at Select Committee and said one of their major concerns with this was that small and medium-sized enterprises would miss out under this model. That private providers of industry training would go to the very easy business model of dealing with large organisations. Business-to-business costs would be much lower and it would be a much cleaner business model for them to deal with. But when it came to the very real need to be delivering industry training for our small and medium-sized enterprises, we heard that this isn't going to work. And Mr Chairman, on this side of the House, we believe denying good industry training and good skills training into our small and medium-sized enterprises is not a way forward for a better New Zealand. We know that so many of our young people are entering small construction firms, small manufacturing business, all kinds of smaller organisations with, say, less than 50 employees. And actually yesterday I had the good fortune to visit one of these construction companies in the Wigram electorate and talked to the owner about what it was that they needed through skills training, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman. And what they need, Mr Chairman, is a very clear plan of what it is in a strategic direction from government, not a continuation of a privatisation agenda that clause 15 with a new 11A inserted goes into there. And Mr Chairman, there's also some further concerns within section 15. It wasn't just at removing the skills function, removing the ability to have direct funding going solely to ITOs. There's also the skills leadership role that industry training organisations currently fulfil. And Mr Chairman, under section 15 in this new clause, clause 15 in this new clause 11A, what we do have is the industry leadership function withdrawn. Now, Mr Chairman, call us old-fashioned, but on this side of the House, we think industry has a role to play in determining what the skills needed by industry are. We don't believe that the government is the sole best person to make that decision. Government members of the committee thought that they were much better placed to make decisions around what the needs of industry in terms of their skills training was to be than those who are on the ground working in the industries, trying to build the houses, trying to run manufacturing companies, trying to run aged care facilities. But no, this is a government that is so arrogant and so out of touch that it doesn't believe those on the ground working in these industries should be funded to play a part in determining what skills are needed in this country. And Mr Chairman, that produced a great deal of concern to us, as well as no need to cry over spilt water. But Mr Chairman, the concerns in part 1 didn't even stop with clause 15. Some other very real concerns were brought to us by the National Council of Women of what this legislation really is missing the opportunity to do. We have some woeful figures in this country around women's participation in many of our trades in this country. The National Council of Women came to the Select Committee with a very elegant solution. They just asked that the word women be included into a priority group of people that could receive skills training. Would government members listen to that? No, they wouldn't. They're not willing to do anything to address the very real gender gap and therefore pay gap that we have because of our skills training. So, Mr Chairman, for us on this side of the House, it is a real disappointment that the government hasn't taken the chance to further enhance our industry training sector. In fact, it has just pursued its ideological commitment to privatising our education system. Not content with charter schools and public-private partnerships, the tendering out of level 1 and 2 funding within our polytechnic sector, they're now seeking to fund money out of the public purse and into private companies through our industry training sector. And Mr Speaker, this didn't come as any great surprise to us, because on this side of the House we know that this is a government that has no real commitment to apprenticeship training and skills training. It is a government that has cut funding. It is a government that gave up on apprenticeships in the 1990s, and it was yet one of the things that the Labour-led government of 1999 had to reintroduce. We have a real commitment to skills training and apprenticeship training on this side of the House. We certainly wouldn't have done what this government did and leave the bulk of the $42 million allocated for the Skills for Canterbury training sitting in the bank for 2 years while our young people went untrained. And there is nothing in this legislation, there is nothing in this bill that is going to turn that around. There is nothing that this government is signalling that it has a renewed commitment. Instead, what we're seeing is a continuation of a walking away from the government's need to really back the fact that the way for New Zealanders and New Zealand to get ahead, or for us to have comprehensive and good skills training in this country. I want to hear the Minister and the Chair take a call and tell us why it is that they don't the National Government don't think that industry should have a role in skills leadership. I'd also like to hear from the Minister and the Chair why it is that they think, despite what the industry and all the players in the sector have told us, that why it is that private providers are better placed to deliver the training, Mr Chairman.
Grant Robertson.
Not one option, Mr. Chair.
Grant Robertson. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.